Good evening, everyone. This is John Asher here in Leesburg, Virginia, welcoming you early birds back to the National Activist Conference Call. This is the third fireside chat with Lyndon LaRouche. If you are on this call for the first time, you are in the right place at the right time. This evening, you'll get to hear a very exciting discussion with Lyndon LaRouche, many-time presidential candidate, leading American economist of our day, leading scientific mind, in a dialogue in which many people have participated over the course of the last couple of weeks. So we will be getting underway here in a few moments with Mr. LaRouche. I want to make a few just little announcements before I turn on my recording device and we get going. First of all, one of the big opportunities we have, everyone who is on the call now, is to circulate this call this evening to create a real snowball effect. We want to take this national call with Mr. LaRouche now taking lead in this and really create a multiplier effect throughout the country. This is Lyndon LaRouche spearheading the rebuilding of the presidency of the United States and reestablishing the principle of a science driver within the American people. And that in conjunction in particular with the efforts and the spearhead of our movement in our Manhattan Project. Now, I'll just mention that this recording from this call is now going to be made available through YouTube. It will be posted on the SoundCloud on the LaRouche PAC website. And for those of you who are more involved in telephones than computers, we will have it available on 2 different telephone numbers. So we would encourage everyone to circulate the recording after the call is over and build the call again for next week. So the major event, I'll emphasize this during when we get the call underway, is this Saturday. We have a national event, which of course is in Manhattan. If you can get to Manhattan, by all means, make arrangements to do so. Get in touch with our New Jersey office. The phone numbers are posted on the Schiller Institute and LaRouche PAC websites. We have an event from 12 till 9:30 p.m. Saturday entitled Decision Day for Humanity. The U.S. must return to its founding principles and join the BRICS alliance now. So by the way, the live stream for this will be on between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern on this Saturday, the 6th of June, 2015. Obviously, we also have a webcast tomorrow evening as well. Now, I'll also mention here, I don't know if I'll get a chance to mention this later on, but in addition to the event in Manhattan, if you go to the events page, which you can find at the top tab of the LaRouche PAC website, you will see local events which are connected to and feeder events to the New York event, which include in Seattle. We also have one in Quincy. You know, I talk to people in Massachusetts if I pronounce it that way. And Alameda, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm sure there's some other areas as well, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. So those are my announcements. Again, if you're just getting on, I'd like to welcome you here back for the LaRouche PAC Activist Conference Call, which is now the Lyndon LaRouche Fireside Chat Call. And we are very happy that Mr. LaRouche has taken charge of this call, and we are going to use this call to organize the entire country. So this is the objective now, and the call this evening is something I would hope that everyone will circulate afterwards, and we're going to be on in a moment with Mr. LaRouche, and I will give instructions on how you can get into the queue to have a shot at asking Mr. LaRouche a question in just one moment. And we will circulate this call, of course, in recording form after this is over. So, again, to welcome everybody, I'm now going to be turning on the recording device in a minute, and we're going to be getting underway in 1 second.
This conference is being recorded.
So, good evening, everyone. This is John Asher in Leesburg, Virginia, welcoming everyone to the third fireside chat with Lyndon LaRouche, who is on with us live this evening. I'd like to welcome all of the assembled members and supporters of the LaRouche movement. If you're on for the first time, I'd like to give you a special welcome. I will give instructions in a moment how you can get into the queue to ask questions of Mr. LaRouche. So, Lynn, are you on there here?
I'm on there.
Okay. All right, terrific. All right, Lynn, so did you want to make any preliminary remarks here this evening?
Yeah, just one, which is a matter of settling unfinished business. We had a report presented from a member, an associate of ours, and it was fairly important because it deals with the distinction between the idea of using trains on tracks, which has a certain validity, of course, naturally. But there's a higher level of importance, which I think we may come in to discuss in the course of events. The fact is that the principles of science, of physical science, are not based on simple, ordinary kinds of algebra. And algebra doesn't do it, because the actual nature of mankind is disseminated by people such as Nicholas Cusa, such as a great scientist, actually, the founder of the understanding of what the solar system is, and also more significantly, more recently, the galactic principle of the fact that the human life is located within the domain of the galactic sphere. That's science. Very few people are aware of it, but that's the fact, and in due course we can encounter that issue again.
Okay. All right. So what I'm doing right now, I'm going to turn on the question and
Q&A session started.
And if you're the first time you're on, you can get into the queue by hitting *6. And I ask people when they ask Mr. LaRouche a question to please focus your question and please give us your first name and your location so we get a sense of the participation of people on the call. So again, so that people know exactly how you can get into the queue, you can do this by hitting *6. That will put you in the queue, and we try to get to as many questions as possible as long as Mr. LaRouche is on. And we are going to take our first question up here.
Okay.
This is Rod from Brooklyn.
Okay.
And I'd like to say good evening to Mr. LaRouche. And I'd also like to say that he talked last week about the fact that the British are responsible for our aggravation. I find in talking to people and telling people this and communicating it and discussing that, in my opinion, Winston Churchill was not a nice guy, and and several other things. I constantly find myself having to do education, you know, in terms of the history of this. People don't seem to quite grasp it, and a lot of this, I think, is because our educational system has been skewed to present anything but. In other words, you know, the British were our good buddies. We fought a war with them, and blah, 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 you know? And that's about how the education system leads us. As far as I'm concerned, Churchill, oof. But the average person I talk to doesn't quite grasp it. And it's difficult sometimes to get this over. I wonder if you have any more comment on that.
Well, sure. The point is we are victims of a British Empire system. We used to be an American system, but over the course of time, a certain group from the British Empire circles became stronger and stronger. We had major fights to bring certain presidents into a leading position. And a very few of our presidents who were elected as presidents were really competent in terms of representing what the principles of our Constitution are. And this is the reality we have to face with. But the other side of the point is that if we do not understand that what the American system represents, as in the case of great leaders, such as great creative people in our history, that we fail because we get sidetracked. We are diverted from our mission, which were given to us. So that's what our problem is.
Okay. All right. We're going to take another question up here. Here we go.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Greg from Los Angeles. And I'm speaking to the nature of the British Empire and our culture as an extension. That there is a theory, I'm paraphrasing, that we were originally complete beings with stupendous insights and feats of awareness. And at one point, a force from the cosmos came and pressed upon us their mind being covetousness, greed, cowardice, and above all, fear. And that fear is their fear of exposure, which they gave to us. And in my lifetime, what I've experienced is my grandparents and parents influenced by FDR with essentially pride and justice to the culture we have now, which is really endless sources of conflict and fear. I'd just like a comment on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, in practice, we've got a very hot and very particular kind of situation now in terms of the electoral process ongoing at this time. We have O'Malley, who is a leading candidate, actually, and we have others in that same category who are important. Our struggle now is to clean up the issues of the ongoing election campaign. We're already in an ongoing election campaign process. And the question is, what are we going to do? What's our policy? What should our policy be? And right now, my view, of course, is that I'm behind what I have been for a long time in terms of my principles of policy, of U.S. policy. I haven't changed much. I've been improved, I should say, more than anything else. But the point is, I'm now backing, personally, I'm backing what is represented by O'Malley and by some other people who go into the same category. I think that because the other choices I see presented on us is not something we want to have if we think of the consequences of what these candidacies mean. And so I'm actively involved in that. And I have, of course, a scientific view of how the economy, and I'm a follower of the greatest people, I think, in the U.S. history. These are the people who I estimate the most.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get another question up here, Lynn. Here we go.
Yes,
all right.
This is Chris from Boston.
Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Good evening, Mr. LaRouche, sir. Since this week, it was the press conference that released the 28 pages of the 9/11 report. I was just wondering, I've studied it, I've looked into it for a few years, and, I find the official story to be a fairy tale, to be honest. with all the overwhelming evidence there is. Would there ever be a time in the future where the people would be held responsible for that, like indictments? I mean, who's, people in the industry?
I think we have to make it that way right now. Now, you see this case of O'Malley. I cannot give you a final judgment on O'Malley's campaign. I can say that so far it's the brightest one I've seen on the horizon, and with good reason. With good reason. His credentials are excellent. They're limited in some degree, but any presidential candidate who's coming seriously into the candidacy is generally an ingenue, relatively speaking. So he represents that. And he represents the principles that represents. He has a fairly significant history in his political history in terms of this. And I think so far he stands up very well. Now, I don't think that's the last answer on the whole thing. But right now, I would say he's the man on the case. Maybe he won't be that in the end, but right now he is the case. His ostensible rivals at this time are not worth supporting.
Okay, here we got someone else up here. Let's see. Here we go. All right.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Rick. I'm originally in New York. I'm a 9/11 survivor and a first responder before the first responders even got there. I want to say thank you, Mr. LaRouche. I cannot thank you. I can't find words to express my gratitude for all of those, Angela and the rest, being there Tuesday with regards to 28 pages. I was the CFO, COO, transitional CEO on Wall Street. As I said, I was in 9/11. I was blown back from time to off my head. Please know I was on the south side. I have over 200 pictures I've never released, and I released 6 of them last year in New York at the release of a movie that came out last year. I've read your stuff. I've always followed you. We both are in total agreement, or I'm in agreement with you, okay? You're my senior and my mentor. I agree with all your financial stuff. I love the big picture, the worldly picture that benefits the American interest and looks at places such as Russia, who was our greatest ally in the Revolutionary War. And shamefully, American kids don't even know these things because they're not taught these things intentionally because of the British monarch, who I don't know how people forget that they were our greatest enemy and never ceased to be our greatest enemy, nor has all those affiliated with them. And there's no need for me to go into that, and just to show that I know it, like I said, I yield to you. Again, I want to thank you. Please know that I had dinner with Rand Paul and his wife about a month ago. And just know that he is the real deal on this issue. That I can tell you. And as you have written, I have the EIEs, the reports and what have you. The way you were able to line this all up, going back to 1985, with the London oil deal with the Saudis, with the 600,000 barrels still being delivered to London to this very day for the exchange of BAE Systems and Defense, which is the British monarch, who actually had places and plants and offices right down in the heart of America's secrecy and military in Pensacola, Eglin Air Force Base. I know you know of these things because that's where I live now. I couldn't stay in New York because it just became so hopeless. I've had my spine reconstructed many times. I'm let Angela fill you in on that. I look very much forward. I just am recovering from another surgery from injuries from then. But I am so much trying to be at your events. And please know I'm there. I can't thank you enough. If there's anything I can do, anytime you want me to speak, whatever, I'm there for you. And again, I can't thank you. We do have to educate not only our young, but those that were put up through the ROTC system and the JAGs especially in the military in the 70s and 80s, because they can't grasp what Andrew Jackson made obvious I mean, these people burned down our White House in 1812. Did the Russians do that? I don't recall them doing anything like that. But I'm just trying to point out things right now, and I think you understand. My question is this. They are coming at us with everything they have right now. As I said, I lived in 9/11. After I got blown back, I was back in those towers. My fiancée was in there. She never came out. She was where the plane went in, the second plane. And I know exactly what went down. Make no mistake. The official story is, as the last caller said, an absolute fairy tale. Absolute fairy tale. But what is more important, and what I heard earlier, we need to understand that not only did the U.S. Patriot Act come about because of it, but there was something much bigger, which you speak to, which has to do with the British monarch, which enabled them to push us into the financial repression beginning in 2009 with that crash and the derivatives of over 600 million. And all of this bringing everything into the 3 to 5 regions that they intend to do and control manufacturing production in the globe using things like Agenda 21 and things of that nature. They are moving now. There's no turning around. And I know you know this because you say it, and I do see it. And I firmly, firmly believe that we are right around the corner for another 9/11 attack, which is going to be much worse. It won't just be anthrax this time, which, as you know, it was reported yesterday, sent to 17 different states and Washington, D.C. Now, why would that be happening? These are things.
Okay, all right, Rick. I think I really appreciate it. You put a lot on the plate here, and I think we'll definitely. I know we've been in touch. So, Lynn, do you have something to say in response to Rick there?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're on the edge of a world war. Now, it's not world war like nothing we've had before. If this occurs, if the United States, under Obama, goes what Obama indicates he's going to do, the chances of survival of the human species are pretty dim. Now, obviously, the condition is to get Obama out of the power over the United States government. But it's actually the power run by the British interest, British Empire. Our problem is to stop this war, which would be an extermination war if it actually happens, is to prevent that war from occurring. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to go with humility. It means we're going to go with good discretion. And it has to be done. At the same time, you see that over the course of the 20th century, the United States has actually been in a long wave of decline in terms of the conditions of life which we provide to our own citizens, the conditions of life in general, the chances of the future. We see what happens to our children, or the young people generally, how the degeneration of their ability to cope with reality is increased. So we have a mission orientation. It's not only for the United States. We also have to deal with the fact we have nations in parts of Asia, in South America, and in Europe, and elsewhere, that we have a responsibility through the responsibilities of the United States itself as a nation. We must achieve a guarantee that a thermonuclear war will not occur. Because if a thermonuclear war occurs between the ostensible powers in conflict today, that could be probably an extermination of the human species. That's where we are. Now, well, that means that if you don't dump Obama out of the presidency and allow him to run out the end of his term, he's getting very close to pushing the United States into a thermonuclear war from which the United States itself would not recover. This is he's a British agent anyway, it's well known. But the problem is we stuck him in there. It should never have happened. It wouldn't have happened if the Bush family hadn't been in there. It was the Bush family's intrusion into the election process which caused the degeneration which led to all these effects since the 20th, the early part of the 20th century. But that's the situation. So we do have to mobilize. We do have also the responsibility of developing an economic recovery which assures a reasonable improvement in the life of people in general. Our point as human beings is not to be a success only in our own life. Our purpose in life is we know we're going to die sooner or later. All of us are going to die sooner or later. But what we have to do is consider what we leave behind us for future generations. And that intention, which is the intention where any soldier of the United States risked their life in trying to deal with this issue. They risked their life for the sake of the future of our people, of our nation, and of the world. And we need that kind of orientation, and we need it urgently now.
Okay, let's take another person up here. Okay, Art, I've unmuted you.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to know what we can do. I'm Art Hoffman in Orange County, California.
Can you speak up a little bit, Art?
I'm Art Hoffman in Orange County, California. And I'm wondering if Mr. LaRouche can tell us what we can do to make the people here, the voters, conducive to the candidacy of Martin O'Malley. That's my question.
There's a lot we can do. That is, each of us can, those of us who know how to deal with these kinds of problems in particular, we know exactly what we have to do. Maybe not the fine details, but we know in principle. We know, for example, that we must remove Obama from the presidency because Obama's on a course of policy making which is aiming directly at World War III. And that's what's happening. Look at what Obama's doing in China. Look at what he's doing otherwise. Look what he's done in Northern Africa. Look at what he's done in many cases. Look what he's done to the American people. Look at what he's done to health care for the American citizens, and so forth and so on. This guy should never have been president. He's a disaster. And we got to have him ushered out of office. Now, that doesn't mean we just want anybody to replace him. Maybe we would almost, out of desperation, want almost anyone to get him out of there. But the point is, we need to compose a presidential campaign for a presidential body, which is not just a president, but is a number of people who have the combined skills and the abilities otherwise to create a presidency which will meet the standard which we have not had very often since the Kennedys were killed. So this is our situation. We have to pull our citizens to come to understand that we must move Obama out of the presidency before he gets by that extra margin which enables him to launch World War III. And I mean World War III. And World War III, as launched by Obama, as the trend shows today, there are very few survivors, if any, from the kind of war that Obama is pulling the United States into.
Okay, here we go. Next person up here. Hello? I just I unclicked you. Someone from California, you are unclicked. If you're speaking, you're still muted. Well, I guess he didn't quite get it there. We're going to go on to someone else. He'll figure it out, though, at some point. Okay, here we're going to... All right, you've been unmuted.
Yes, this is Fred, Unifil, Louisiana. Lynn, will you dialogue the effect of regulating the value of money and of foreign coin and fixing the standards of weights and measures in the physical economy, which is Article 1 of the Constitution? Can you reflect on that?
The voice was so weak, I had trouble hearing.
Well, Fred, could you repeat it again?
Yes, the Constitution calls on regulating the value of money and of foreign coin and fixing the standards of weights and measures. Article 1 of the Constitution. Lynn, can you discuss that and brief us on how you get the physical economy in balance?
Well, yeah, that idea, that concept, that conception is a valid one, but there's underneath it, there's a more important one. I mean, that's a good example. That's a good starting point for the discussion of that issue. But you have to go something deeper. For example, the key thing here is how can we in the United States, for example, how can we take this mess we have now, and it is a mess. It's a terrible situation. The situation of the Americans since the Bush presidency and now the Obama presidency, which is much worse, is destroying the United States and destroying the rights and so forth of the people. So we have to get that cleaned up. So the first question is throw Obama out of office. Because if you don't throw him out of office, you're not going to get anywhere. He's on the road to launching or provoking the launching of thermonuclear war globally. And that would be pretty much the extension of the human species, the extermination of it. So the other thing is, what are we going to do, presuming that we keep from Obama from destroying the world? What are we going to do to deal with the problems we already have here? Like problems of economy, problems of social care, problems of morality, and so forth. So we have another two problems. We have to deal with a threat which threatens the extinction of our existence, and at the same time we have to deal with the problems and particularly the injustices which are imposed upon our people. I know that the solutions for these kinds of problems exist. I know what they are. I've had a lot of history of this thing. I know what it is. We can do it. The question is, can we muster among our people, among our citizens, can we succeed in mustering a sufficient part of our citizens right now in order to bring about a forced action primed by the desire of our citizens to say, we are not going to war, we are getting out of this starvation, we don't want to be cheated anymore, we don't want the people who have been cheating us to have any more control over us. That's about the short of it. And that's a good place to want to get a bigger discussion of the thing. That's a good place to start.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we're going to take another person up here. I think I have someone from the New York area.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
John?
Yes, this is John and Mr. LaRouche. You're on.
Okay, this is Bill Monroe. I'm with the New York group. I'm a World War II veteran, Mr. LaRouche, and I got you a little bit because I'm 95 years of age. I went over the third wave of invasion in Europe, and when things kind of quieted down a little bit, I had a one-on-one with General de Gaulle. But what's troubling me now in particular is the people that are poisoning our food.
Are you aware of this, and do you have any particular means at your disposal to offset the poison of our food? I'm listening.
Yeah, okay. Well, of course I know about that. There's all kinds of aspects to it. The very fact that we are cheated in the food we have access to. The fact we're being deprived of access to nourishment that we need. And that's all there. But this is a product. What we're seeing now is a product of a process that's been going on for a great deal of time. You know, we went through, I was, belonged, as you did, belonged to the period of World War II. You were obviously serving in World War II. And that's part of it. But we were also serving in the intermediate periods. We were trying to fight against those people who were destroying the rights of our own citizens, even then. And the fact we had presidents who got assassinated, and not much was done about that in curing that problem. We've come to the point that we must be determined, as a group of people, we must be determined to ensure, at your age, of course, it's more important than ever, right? To be ensured that we have secured the kind of situation, the kind of society which we require for the future of this coming generations of our citizens. Because we're all going to die. The point that the meaning of life is not dying. The meaning of life is what you can accomplish for the future while you're still alive. And that's my principle. You're a little older than I am by a significant stretch, but that's what it is.
Okay, all right. So we're going to take another person up here.
Yes, thank you. This is Ken from Silicon Valley in California. Mr. LaRouche, again, thank you for being on the call tonight. It is a real honor to get to speak to you. My concern is, I'm asked to help out with donations periodically for the LaRouche PAC, and that takes money. My concern is it seems like money, unfortunately, drives our system entirely. And it discourages me to see our mass media join in so many who want to demonize China and Russia, and as you said, lead us into war. What's an effective way to battle that monetarism that just runs the world?
Well, the problem is we've got to take the case of California. Now, some time ago, we had a governor in California who was a very good governor. Well, that was some time back before other people got in there, including the current governor. So what they're doing now is they're proposing that we have to draw down the access to water, which is water of life, really. And say we have to withdraw that water from the citizens, not only of California, but of the states which are between there and, the where area, the area. So we have a struggle right now, a struggle to prevent a systematic, thorough mass killing of the citizens of the United States in particular. That's what's behind what the present governor of California has done publicly. That's what he's proposed publicly. And so therefore, these are the kinds of things that should make people think that maybe there's something wrong in the political process now inside the United States, not just in California. Well, there is no reason, no scientific reason, why we have to dry up the resources of water in California. there are difficulties which have to be overcome to deal with the water problem in California. They're serious ones, but there are scientific principles which, if put to work and developed and being put to work, which can address this issue. The control of water, just to get the fact of the matter, the control of water is not based on water on Earth. Yes, water on Earth is a very significant part of the water available to mankind. But the source of the security of water by humanity is not located in Earth. It's located in the galaxy. That is, the galactic process is a source. Our problem, when you're dealing with a water problem such as California, how do we use our technology, our skills and technology, to manage some of that water, which is circling around us and is involved in that area? How do we get that into moving it into an area where the water that we need on Earth is actually prompted to come down? If we address that problem, which is a problem which does lend itself to solutions, if we do that, we rise a little higher level of technology, but we can do it. The galactic system is also reflected by the system of Earth anyway. So that's what we are. We are threatened from our own government inside the United States at present by depriving our citizens from the means of having sufficient water to maintain the existing population of our nation. And we should take that exemplary case and let that be the root of our motivation to fix some of the things that need to be fixed.
Okay, you're going to take another person up here. Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. This is Eric in Los Angeles. Mr. LaRouche, it is an honor and a privilege to be talking with you this evening. And 2 weeks ago, a lady called in and asked you about ISIS and how to defeat it militarily. And you referenced her to the ineptitude of Congress, which of course there's no doubt there. They voted to send weapons to these terrorists. But isn't ISIS actually, in fact, a front for the Western oligarchy, as we've seen in Libya and are, as a matter of fact, currently seeing in Syria? So ultimately, even a creation of British America and British Arabia and even the 51st state of Israel to squelch resistance in the Middle East and put them under the boot of the empire?
I would say that Israel is not the major problem. You've got some bad choices of leaders in Israel. But if you understand the history of Israel, how it in its modern game, you understand some of these things. And you find that most of the Israeli population is not evil, though some people in that may be evil in terms of the consequences of what they do. But that's not the issue. The issue is simply the British Empire, the British Royal Empire, which is the mother of the Saudi kingdom and related things. These terrible things, including the role of the British royal family, which is an evil force, these are the things we have to free mankind from. And if we get rid of these various crooks in our own nest and deal with the problem of the British Empire and deal with some other things of that nature, we find that the world in large, in terms of the general population of the planet, is trying to move in a direction which is nobler than anything we've experienced in a long period of time. You look at what's happening in China. You look what's happening in India right now. You look at what's happening in certain other parts of the world. And you see the nations are struggling to bring themselves into a state of government, of self-government and government in general, which is good. It may not be perfect, but it's good and it's going in the right direction. And the greatest part of the population of the planet is actually pushing for a good situation of relations among states and peoples. So that's there. Our problem is, do we, in the United States, as well as what we have to do with nations of Europe and so forth, what we have to do is we have to get rid of Wall Street. That's the first thing we have to do. Don't you know that? Look, Wall Street is bankrupt, totally bankrupt. But nobody will let it get shut down because it's protected by the Wall Street interests. Now, if we would shut down Wall Street, but because it is a fraud, because it is worthless, we would find that, and if we turned our policies back to what they were, say, back 50 years ago, we would very rapidly move in a positive direction for life in general and for conditions of life. So I think that's the way you have to look at it. On the one hand, we know the evil is there, the problem is there, but we also know the majority of the planet, in terms of national forces, is actually aiming for common good things to happen. They may not always agree with you, but we're trying to move in that direction. And what we want to do is get the United States free of Obama and free of what he represents, the Bushes, for example. Get rid of that. And turn that, by that means, we can turn the United States population into an effective force to free us from the problems that curse us from within at this time.
Okay, here we keep on. We got a long list here, Lynn. We got another person up here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. My name is Dwight. I'm in Indianapolis. How are you doing this evening, Mr. LaRouche?
I'm not too badly, considering my age.
I hope I live to be that long. What I wanted to ask you about is Israel. You've been given, and as I said, you give Israel a break that you do not give to the Saudis. You've been asking for the 28 pages, and I'm behind you on that. But I think you had the dancing Israelis, you have the dual citizenship Israeli-Americans in Congress and in the administration. I think that you're giving Israel a break and not attributing their responsibility to what's happening in the world today.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there's a fact here, and I know the fact very well, and because I've been around all the world, back and forth a few times around, and I also know what goes on in our country. I also understand the whole anti-Semitic stuff in the United States. I've lived since youth in that issue, and people would say I was Jewish. Well, I'm not Jewish, but they thought I was because I wasn't on this other side. But we don't have a problem, a Jewish problem, not really. That doesn't exist. You may have isolated cases, people who are gangster inclined and so forth, but that's not the general thing. The Jewish population is actually very close to what's called the Christian population. There's not that much difference. There's difference in terms of bad face, bad things, bad behavior. But in general, in the history of Jewry in the United States and in parts of Europe, let's say, Hitler nonsense, and also some French nonsense and some Italian nonsense, the French nonsense in particular. But there is no problem like that. There are not a systemic problem. There are special conditions which are induced by pressures of various kinds, and they produce hateful attitudes of those who feel they're victimized and those who feel they want to victimize somebody else. So it's not really that kind of a problem. If we have a United States which is functioning as it should, without Wall Street, eliminate Wall Street, that's the key to a lot of problems. And again, you talk about normal people with Jewish religious backgrounds and so forth. You don't really have much of a problem. No more problem than any next door neighbor you have. So, I mean, the very idea that we have to have an anti-Semitic or counter-anti-Semitic thing is not really a legitimate issue, because the issue is something which is reflects a product of what should not have occurred, which did occur, and that's the way to look at it. But there's no reason to say there's any systemic, justified conflict between Jews and Christians, for example.
Well, I say mazel tov to that, Lynn, so I'm going to take the next person up. Okay, here we go. All right, let's see. Okay.
Okay, hi, Lynn. This is Brett from Washington. Hi, I had a question about, oh geez, where do I start? Well, I signed the BRICS, and if everybody did that, that might change Wall Street, right? And I'm gonna go get some cattle prods and hand them out down there in Washington and see if we can get them Congress people to get off their ass and stand up and impeach Obama. That's all I got to say.
Okay, I'll say one thing in response to that. We have two cases now of people who are, along with O'Malley, who are ready to move to create a new elections process for the United States, to create a new composition of of our system of government. And if we do that and can avoid a thermonuclear war in the meantime, I think that we have entered a new period. For example, let's look at South America, or most of South America. What I know what's going on in South America is a very beautiful change for the better. Similarly, we see what's happening in China. And what's happening in China is essentially, from the standpoint of statecraft, is beautiful. What's happening in Russia is actually quite beautiful. And Russia has a legacy of capabilities of engineering, science, and so forth, which is very important. We have also, in other parts of Europe, where they have bad conditions now, those conditions will be cured. Remember that Spain, Portugal, France also, but especially Italy, have been abused. They've been suppressed. They've been reduced to poverty to a great degree, in a very serious degree of repression. And therefore, all we have to do is change our attitude sometimes and recognize that what's going on is bad conditions on the planet broadly, but those conditions are not the conditions which are desired by the populations more generally. And we have to operate from that standpoint. We've got to a point now where we cannot fight general warfare anymore. General warfare, in its present stage of technology, would mean extermination of the human species. But what we're confronted with at this time is if Obama is not removed from the presidency, if he's not kicked out of his office, the danger is that he is moving rapidly toward causing a global thermonuclear war, a war which could lead probably to the extermination of the human species. And so therefore, our objective is not to say, how can we win wars? And any competent general officer in the United States and similar nations knows that. So why are we toying with this junk? Why are we playing this game? Because a few Nazis, like those in Ukraine, who are really not most of the Ukrainian people, but most of the Ukrainian people are under the control of a Nazi party inside Ukraine. So that if we deal with these problems, the threats of warfare, and get nations to recognize it, and recognize what the greatest injustices are that are going on right now, we have a reason to bring nations to recognize that they have a common interest, that they may have different ways of functioning, somewhat different objectives. But we know that the interest of those nations, those peoples, is their interest is to benefit from the kinds of options which should be made available to them right now. And that's us too. So it's in our common interest to share our common interest with some other people in other nations.
Okay, here we'll take another person up here, Lynn.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Okay. I want to ask Mr. LaRouche a question. How can we do this? Neither political party listen to the voters. They seem to have a mind of their own. And we understand that there's actually a different agenda. How can we get Mr. Obama out of office, or do we have to wait till his term ends? Thank you.
No, you don't wait until his term ends, because his end would be your end. And you don't want that. No, we've got to get this guy out of there. And it can be done. The O'Malley campaign for president right now, which is coming into focus, with some other things which are related to that. There is a movement of resistance against what Obama represents and what some of the worst Republicans represent also at the same time. The opportunists, that sort of thing. So we have the reason to wish and to act to free ourselves of these diseases. We must do it. We can do it. We simply have to put our minds to it. We'll find we can do it. I know we can do it. I got a good smell for this kind of thing.
Okay, here we'll get another person up here. Okay, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
This is Brian Lay. My question for LaRouche, and how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Brian. I'm old and happy.
Well, you sound happy. That's good. But I think that's my question would be that crises seems to be generating in people a sort of retreat mentality, and you stated rightly about how do you have to snap people just out of it. I mean, obviously, the conditions by which we are getting people out of these crises, obviously, it takes on a beauty inside people's souls in order to see what has to be done in order to get rid of this evil. So my question to you is, under these conditions, what would be the conditions by which humanity would actually save themselves away from this existential threat?
What do you think, for example, that the typical person, often deprived, especially broadly, nationally here, deprived, intimidated, beaten, so forth, demoralized. What do you think that citizen, that also typical citizen throughout our United States, don't you think those citizens would like to be free, would like to be escape from the kind of tyranny which Wall Street, for example, represents? Why do you think so many people in the United States are poor? Because Wall Street does it. Wall Street has gained the power to come in and rob you and rob the nation generally of everything. If you look at what happened over the course of the 20th century into the present recent period now here, you see that the people of the United States have been actually being deprived increasingly as a whole over the entire period since the 20th century began. Don't you think that those Americans, if they're not, tortured into some kind of obscenity, would like to have a decent life? Don't you think that parents would wish they could have decent children who can live and be successful? Don't you think that people with hunger who are being robbed and suppressed would not like to be freed of that? The problem is we who have the spark and experience must encourage our fellow citizens to join together with us to bring about the action, the political action, which throws the tyrants out of their pews.
Okay. All right. We're going to get another person up here. Okay. You're on.
This is Ken Swanson in Moline, Illinois. President Obama's mother and maternal grandparents worked for the CIA, and that's been covered up because they don't want the people to know that he has any connection like that to the CIA.
Well, that means there's a certain truth to that. When you look at it on the facts of the cases as presented normally, that's a very simple way of looking at what the abuse is that people are suffering, actually suffering. The problem is we have to look at the other side. We have to concentrate on what the measures are which are available to our hand to change that. It's when people submit to oppression that oppression takes over a nation. And if you don't have a certain kind of insolence about people being pushed around, then you give in. You give in to tyranny. And I've been a stubborn cuss, and I can say fairly, without any exaggeration, that I've always been on that side, the side that the people in general have the right to be independent of tyranny. But I would say also that the tyranny applied to our people in terms of bad education, bad job operations, everything you want to talk about, every kind of deterioration and filth that's happened to our people. And we've let it happen. And I think the time has come. I've been at this for a long time. I've been fighting this fight for a long time. But now we're on the edge of an option of winning. And the time to win, to muster ourselves, and to go out into the election campaign theater and get a new president in place now. I think we can do it because Wall Street is bankrupt. Wall Street is bankrupt. It has no value. Take the case of what's going on in Europe. throughout Europe, generally, Europe is bankrupt. The British Empire is bankrupt. That is, all the swindlers are implicitly thus bankrupt. But on the other hand, there are technologies which exist, which are available. You see what's happening in China, what's happening in India, despite the problems they have now with the weather system. But we're seeing it in South America. We're seeing elsewhere. We're seeing that in the world there is a virtual majority of the population of the planets as momentary movement characters. They're oriented in that direction. Well, all we have to do is join with them around the same issue. We must create a better world for the human beings who inhabit it. That's the simple version of what we must do. The time has come to do it. Now, I think on the case of O'Malley and what is associated with him also, that I think there's a potential coming out right now at us in which we have reached a point which O'Malley expresses. And he expresses it adequately because he has a history which fits this story. That if we move now on the basis of saying we're going to get a better system of government, that is a new institution of government, which is better than this crap we've been subjected to for the past 8 years. And if we do that, we are on the road to a new and better world than we have known in a very long time.
Okay. All right, we got another person up here. Okay,
yes,
you're on.
Hello, this is Wayne from Virginia. I've been, all these people still wondering what ISIS is, and this is just a short comment before my question, but it might help them understand who ISIS is if they understood what the dynamics behind the Confederacy was. And my question is around this continuing development. This is the genesis of the effort to release the 28 pages, which actually goes all the way back to when Mr. LaRouche was on a talk radio show the day that 9/11 attacks occurred, when he exposed what was really behind the attack. And I was just wondering if he could comment on the relevancy of the most recent press conference to release the 28 pages, if that really reflects a more developed understanding, as to what's really behind this and how it can be actually accomplished getting Obama out of office.
I can use a military example from my observation of warfare and what its effects are. That, there are two things you can do when you're going to a war. One is to run away, and the other is to charge ahead. But don't charge foolishly, but rather deploy yourself in such a way that you actually have a chance at victory. But victory lies in the attitude largely of the soldier and those who are around them. The courage to realize what the thing is that should be done, that must be done, and that it can be done. And that's where we are now. We're at that point. Can we, the citizens of the United States, in this United States, these citizens here, can they capture a memory of the courage of the United States in fighting deadly wars such as World War I and World War II? Can we cope with that? Can we cope with that effort? Can we act accordingly? Can we lay down our lives at risk in order to ensure that the future of mankind, of our people, will be secured and better because we took the chance to win that battle? That's the question. To me, it's a not rather obvious one because I have a very attitude about life and death. I'm not a person who wants to die. I just don't even think much about it. I had a few occasions to think something about that, but it was never really a big thing for me. My concern was the shame of not doing the thing that you knew you had to do. And that's still my policy. I will not give in to betray what I know my responsibility is. And if we get more people doing that and can be encouraged to do that, we have within us the power for victory.
Okay, here we go with another person. You are unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
First of all, it's an honor to be speaking with you gentlemen. My name is Jake, and I'm a U.S. soldier and resident of California. My question is, how can I support and educate others in my job field about the goals of the LaRouche PAC without opposing, my boss, the president? And how can I show people that are kind of rather ignorant that this is actually for America, not against America, and that, things like the BRICS nations can be an absolute economic blessing to us if we let it be?
So look, we are individuals. We have, particularly in the United States, where those of us who have some decent kind of education, especially some knowledge of the history of our nation, and therefore we're not fools that have to sit there and be impressed by tyranny or tyrannical attitudes. We don't have to. Sometimes you get yourself nearly get killed or even actually killed because you're resisting evil. But what's the point? The point is the purpose of human life, the true purpose of human life, is don't waste your existence, which means that if you are putting your life in danger because you think you have to for the sake of mankind, you will try to minimize the danger, but you won't back off. You may go sideways and try to outflank the guy who's out after to kill you. But you don't give in like a coward. You don't cringe and collapse. Because human life is not a permanent thing. Everyone, so far as we know, and we heard about Methuselah, but I haven't got the record, I haven't got the score there. I don't know that those dates are actually true. But the point is, mankind is generally died within their generation. And yet, they have done great things, in effect, for the next generations. Many of them have. So what's wrong with death if it comes honorably? If you don't take your own life, suicide is not an option. Well, there may be a case where it's an option. But generally, suicide is not an option. Cowardice is not an option. Mankind must do the best they can, each, to realize the meaning of the future of humanity. We live for the future of our human species. We live in order to hope that we've achieved a better future for our successors than we had for ourselves. And that's our mission in life. There's no room for cowardice in human life. Is to live in such a way that whatever happens to you or people like you, that thing must come out as a plus for the next generation.
Okay. All right. And take another person up here. Okay. You're on.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Kathleen Fabiano from Massachusetts.
Okay.
You just asked a question, Mr. LaRouche. Can we make, a better future for the next generations? It's not a case of can we. It's a case of we have to.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off.
Do it.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
We must do it. We must fight to make the future better for the next generations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The question is, how do we do that? That's the issue. How do we do it? Well, first of all, look what we've got. I like to pick on this thing because I know about it, and we've been doing it in my group of people working on this thing. We have focused on the fact that the source of waters, the supply of water for the needs of mankind is not located primarily on Earth. It's located in the galaxy. And man's challenge in that respect is that how do we manage and control the galaxy? Or induce the galaxy to help us in supplying what we need, for example, as water. And there are techniques which can be applied to induce that effect. Those techniques are known in some degree, but they're not fully enriched. That is, they're not fully understood. But we know it is true. The greatest source of water for man's requirements is located in the galaxy, not on Earth. There's a large amount of water on Earth, but that amount of water is not necessarily adequate to meet the requirements of mankind's residence on Earth. However, we have access to scientific understandings which will enable us to understand how we can improve our access to the use of water for man's purposes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take another person up here. Okay, you're unmuted. Hello? Yes, you are unmuted. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I believe in your mission to make a better future for those who follow us. But I believe that to do this, we need to know, love, and serve our Creator, who is God. Then He will help our goals to be achieved that you have been discussing. Currently, America has turned its back against God, as exemplified by legalized abortion, where we have killed more than 100 million unborn children. And now it's gotten to where we're may have legalized same-sex marriage, and I think you all know what happened to those in the Old Testament for Sodom and Gomorrah, which totally destroyed. Okay, so we now have Obama. It's a possibility that he is being used by God as a punishment to us.
Okay, well, that's a good question. Lynn, did you hear his question?
Yeah, I did. I don't think God does that. That's not the way it works. What works is the fact that mankind becomes an agent of Satan. That's a better way of putting it. And we just don't want people to become satanic. Because when you're talking about these kinds of things, you're really talking about things that border on satanic. I mean, abuse of people, unjust imprisonment, all these kinds of things. These are wrongs. They're wrongs against humanity. And when humanity does those wrongs, then humanity is guilty of a crime. And that's the way to look at it. Well, the best way we always try to deal with things should be that we try to induce our fellow human beings to abandon things that are inherently destructive. And that's as far as we really want to go. If we find a person who is a criminal, who can't be controlled, who's going to kill people or do other serious damages, well, it's perfectly lawful to put them under restraint. Not to abuse them, but to put them under restraint. Try to induce them to change their ways. That's real. And the best thing is, if you're clever enough, you often can induce people who would otherwise tend to become criminals by simply discouraging them from criminality, because you provide them an idea, an image of what they're doing as being evil. And the fact that they recognize that as being evil or something equivalent to evil, it can be an induction to people to get rid of their dirty habits. And we try to do that as much as possible. But above all, we concentrate on the children. We have to care for our children. We have to ensure that they're guided safely before they reach the age of, judgment. And that's the important thing. And we have to, force that through in the sense of encouraging it. We have to educate students, children. We have to educate them. If they're educated and understand what the world is made of, they won't be stupid. But if we don't educate them, they're likely to become stupid. If they become stupid, they may become criminal. So it's that nature. We as society are responsible to do everything we can to ensure that our people do not become criminals. That our people not only do not become criminals, but they realize something good in themselves which can be brought out in them with some help.
Okay, take another person up here. Here we go. Okay, you're unmuted.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi. This is Fran calling from East Orange, New Jersey. How are you, Mr. LaRouche? I met you a number of years ago. What I'm wondering, you may have partially answered my question regarding education and youth, because I'm sure you've seen, like down in North New Jersey, the children in the high schools, have walked out because they feel as if, because the state of New Jersey is monitoring the educational system in Newark and a good many urban areas here in New Jersey, the children are dissatisfied with the type of education that they're getting. And my question is, how do we get a handle on that, where we could see that the educational system throughout the country is improved, where children feel that they are not being neglected, and then also to stem this gang warfare that we see going on with children, and to prevent another Ferguson and another Baltimore? Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, let's say that we have O'Malley becomes president, or is in the process of becoming president. Just as a, shall we say, if so. Now, what would that mean? That would mean that the school system, which has become a travesty, an abomination, this has been going on for a very significant time, 2 generations, and actually more. going bad, even, during the time I was being a student in school. It was bad then. But that was sweet times compared to what we've been getting in the past couple of generations, or we call them degenerations. And therefore, what's happened to students, what's happened to the school system, what's happened to the culture of the street is a destruction of the very souls of the human individuals, the young ones. And that means degeneration of the older ones as a result. Well, therefore, if we're going to have a new president, a new presidency, under a competent president, as opposed to the, you know what I mean, the kind of people I mean, the Bush people. If we're going to do that, then we're going to reverse the trend toward degeneration in the members of our children and adolescents and so forth. We're going to change the way in which people are employed, something more fitting for human beings. And I think that, O'Malley, by virtue of as much as I know about him, would be the kind of president you might want to have for those reasons.
Okay, well, Lynn, I think we're getting right up to the point we had discussed. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground here this evening. Do you want to give a summary? Should we take another call here?
Well, take another call, see what happens.
Okay. All right, we'll give that a go. Here we go. Okay.
Hi, this is Betty. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Betty.
Okay, I'm from Houston currently, but I met Lyndon back in 1975, 1976 when I was just a kid. And glad to hear Lyndon on these calls. This is great. Direct from the horse's mouth. I just want to say that I got an email today from Beta O'Rourke in response to a query that I sent to him about HR 14. And he said he read the 28 pages and he's going to co-sponsor HR 14.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Betty?
Yeah, on the phone. So I just got an email today from Beta O'Rourke.
Okay.
He's a congressman from El Paso.
Congressman from El Paso is going to co-sponsor the bill to expose the 28 pages. Okay, good.
That's right. All right.
Okay.
That's great. Good effort.
All right. That's excellent. Okay. All right. So we will, I guess we'll, Lynn, Lynn, we're at an hour and a half. I think would be appropriate time perhaps to get a summary from you so people can get some more sense of where we should go between here and our next call.
Well, I think the thing was we have to realize that I think the O'Malley case, I'm not going to say conclusively that O'Malley is the solution. What I say is that what I'm looking at in him is a very credible case for a good choice as president. I don't know the last answer, but I know right now that compared to among all the options I see out there in the election process, that he is probably the man we want. I'm not. But I would also say, as I've said before on earlier occasions, the important thing here is not just a president. The important thing here is to assemble a group of leaders in the presidency as the presidency system. And we have to get a composition of members of that team, which by its very nature is the kind of agency which should be responsible for the agency of our government in this term. That's what's important. And I think O'Malley, so far, you can say faithfully that compared with the, shall we say, not so good people who are also running for president, that he stands out as being a favorable choice. But he's going to meet that requirement, we're going to have to see in him a justified assessment of a man qualified to move into the actual procedure of becoming president.
Well, I think, Lynn, that's a absolutely fitting point to conclude our discussion this evening. I mean, on behalf of everyone on the call, again, like to thank you for engaging in this dialogue. I think it's absolutely crucial. And I would just, kind of in my own conclusion here, Lynn, like to throw the challenge out to everybody on the call here this evening that this discussion in the last 3 weeks is critical, as you just identified, for the rebuilding of the presidency as a process in this country, for the process of recreating a science driver, as you identified here this evening. And I think that I'm hoping that the circulation of this call and the previous ones and getting that around to people, we can continue to build this and expand and accelerate the dialogue. I also want to make sure that everybody on the call here this evening is totally geared up, because on Saturday in Manhattan, we are going to have a major event coming up on the question that the United States must join with the BRICS and go back to its founding principles. That event is going to be between 12 and 9:30 in New York City. And if you can get to that, you should contact our office in New Jersey. And it will be broadcast live over LaRouche PAC starting at 1 o'clock Eastern. And there are other events that will hook into that event in New York City on Saturday that will be taking place in various locations around the country. And that information is available on the website. And lastly, as I indicated to Lynn last night, and as he has been stressing in the recent period, given the imminence of the financial blowout, as everybody knows, Mr. LaRouche has stressed that we have to, among other things, get Glass-Steagall immediately. And I was discussing this with Mr. LaRouche last night and mentioning the fact that my wife, Rochelle Asher, is leading our charge on Capitol Hill and helping to get Glass-Steagall through there, which is H.R. 381. And we basically concluded that she can use everybody on this call's effort to kick your congressman in the ass. And Mr. LaRouche added to that there might even be more sensitive locations. So, so in any event, we've got some marching orders, and we have basically the call to get around. We have the event on Saturday, and I hope that everybody on the call here this evening is going to circulate this discussion and build our audience for the next call with Mr. LaRouche next week. And we will be looking forward, Lynn, to talk to you again. And again, like to thank you for being on with us again this evening, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So that concludes our call for this evening, and we will be talking with you all soon. Everybody have a good evening. Bye-bye now.